What up, boys? Berger Bros Podcast number 7. Here we are again, 4:20 on the dot. You know what that means?
Nope. What does that mean, Jeremy?
It means that it's time to smoke up. Yeah.
Good talk, man. All right. And that's the end of the show.
Anyway, show's over. Let's go. I got the bong in the back.
So this show, we decided that we talk about nothing and we're going to just see how it goes.
Yeah. There was actually a funny comment on one of our posts, and somebody said, I guess everyone can make a podcast these days.
I'm like, fans. Yeah,
pretty much. Yeah, thanks.
I'm glad that post was on minute 59.
Yeah, they listened to the whole thing. I was just thinking about it, and it's like, the three of us probably hop on calls 3 to 5 times a day, and we talk about crypto and trading and life and things going on. And it's like, why not just toss it up on the internet? Maybe somebody might like it, might find value.
Well, we got one fan.
Yeah, we got one. We got one. Actually, we got like 20 subscribers on YouTube, which is
Mama, we made it.
Yeah, Mommy, we get paid on YouTube now. Got 20 subscribers. No, but it's I think it's cool. Look, we like to talk about crypto, and I know there's crypto's popping right now. So
it sure is.
Well, actually, crypto's nosediving right now. But I feel like everything kind of turned around last night, and I think there's going to be a slow climb up.
It definitely turned around in the meme game, but I don't know if it turned around in everything. I mean, Bitcoin is still just way down, and so is Ethereum. But it's testing these levels because the Ethereum ETF is coming. It's coming out hot. So all this stuff's going to change. It's kind of funny.
Do you think that when the Ethereum ETF comes out, like it's going to have an effect, like major effect on the market?
Yeah, it's going to have a major effect on Ethereum, even if it's just buy the rumor, sell the news. The second that they get like an actual date, that thing's just the internet's going to catch on fire. And then, you have all these projects that are built on Ethereum. So when Ethereum goes up, those projects feel the ramifications as their trading pair increases. So that's going to have a huge effect. And then you have all those like OG meme coins that were built on Ethereum, and those things are going to go parabolic. The SHIBs and the Pepes and all that stuff is just going to boost. So yeah, it's going to be, and then you think about the people who buy all those like meme shit coins. Those are the people that are going to be running around, screaming on the top of their lungs. They're the loudest voices, and that's going to have a ripple effect at, at the 4th of July party.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably, it made me think about just like, even like Solana, Solana's down $50 from its 174 where it was like last month. That probably has a lot to do with a lot of the Solana coins coming down significantly, like Mumu and Mamba.
Well, that's the other. It doesn't have to do with those meme coins are coming down because Solana is coming down. Not
that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. All those are coming down because their trading pair, went down, 40% or something.
But you also saw all those boost up when the trading pair was.
Well, I think what happened is everybody unloaded and got out of those positions and went and loaded up into the ones that were going off so people could continue to make money. And now all those things are cooling off. And we need some. This week I heard is going to be a big week with like a lot of, announcements, a lot of industry, like the GDP reports are coming out, and a lot of like earnings reports are coming out this week. So there's going to be a lot of volatility.
Yeah,
there's definitely this is a big one. This is definitely a big week for a couple things. And I think every other week or every 3 weeks at the very least, it's a big week for something in the financial market, something that will impact financial markets. So, for sure that can have an impact on crypto, risk on assets. And, that ultimately ends up filtering into the way the macro markets, especially crypto markets, react. And then we're, of course, always just trading against, all those scenarios and situations. And then, you have your conviction plays, the things that you're excited about, individual projects, or obviously we're always excited about Packet, but there's some major stuff happening with Packet that we're super excited about. And it'll be exciting to see how the rest of the year unfolds. I've been saying it over and over again. So I think that we're kind of in the, we're in the eve of the bull market really beginning to take off. I'm kind of calling it that it's going to be fall going into winter is
October.
Going to really heat up. And
when was that first huge leg on Ethereum? It was October. It was right after my birthday.
Yeah, because remember, and I'll never forget it, on your birthday was when Trump got COVID.
Right.
And that's when Ethereum crashed. And that's when we stole to try and short Ethereum. And that didn't work out very good for us. As a multi-million
that did not work good.
That was a multi-million-dollar L, sir.
Yeah, COVID is not a reason for the markets to do anything, and even if the president gets it.
Yeah, well, the traditional markets did actually have a problem with that, but the crypto market thought that
crypto markets went.
Like, Trump's gonna die. Bye. And he didn't die, but they still bought. I'm excited about it. It's all kind of funny because each season, in crypto works in these 4-year cycles. But each bull market season, there's always kind of these buckets where everyone's, making a lot of money. And, I remember, back in 2017, 2018, it was all about the ICO craze, and there was just so much money being made. It was crazy. Those projects were just, boosting. And then last cycle was really around like NFTs, and people were just making like crazy money off of NFTs. And there's a couple of meme coins that just went ridiculous, like the Safe Moon and Shiba Inu and Doge. Those all kind of just popped off. And all those ones are just trash. I mean, Safe Moon turned out to be a total scam. And then, this season there's like all these meme coins that are just popping off because people just saw that. So it's interesting to see these things that kind of blow up in these different cycles.
Now they make it so easy, I was just saying, now they just make it so easy to create a token,
Right.
There's a website, you go there and set it up in 5 minutes.
And DeFi really popped off last season, and that really matured. So I think we saw these things that kind of like started in the last cycle, which was meme coins. Even though, Doge was around forever. But the meme coins really popped, and DeFi really kind of came on the scene in this last cycle. And I think DeFi and meme tokens are going to be just the biggest thing of this cycle that we're going to see. I mean, it's crazy because, obviously these things are big things like that create legitimacy for crypto when you're talking about Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana, even though that thing, is pretty centralized and goes down every weekend. It hasn't gone down in the last, couple of months, which has been pretty nice. But those are going to be the big players in the space. And they've always been the big players. But it's all the stuff that all these layer twos and all the things that are built on top of those networks are going to be really exciting this season.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just thinking while you were talking, Josh, I was just thinking about like in the last bull run, projects like Zilliqa and Vet, like all those things, all those went up to like 25, 30 cents. Even remember Harmony, the one coin?
Yeah.
They all went up to like 25, 30 cents and then came crashing down back to a penny. That's like insane.
Yeah.
And it's like, and those projects, I've stayed in a lot of them or at least a portion in them. And I'm just like, how are they going to, make their move this next run? Like, what's going to make those projects go up? Is it just the fact that like the total market cap for crypto is going to go up so significantly, like 10, 12x, maybe even 50x, than just like when, rising water, or what is it? Rising water rises all ships or something like that. Like everything's going to just go up because Bitcoin, Ethereum, are going to be up so high that all the other projects will just, go up as well.
I think we forget that the bull market hasn't even started. Like what's unique about this cycle that's different than any other cycle is that Bitcoin hit its all-time high prior to the halving. That's never happened before. And so that's why this cycle feels different, because it's never happened where Bitcoin just absolutely moonshot before the halving goes. So that's kind of thrown everybody off a little bit. Before it was like this slow climb and we're slowly getting there. And then the halving happens. And then, after the halving, we slow. And then we get that, some event that moonshots everything to the sky. But in this cycle, Bitcoin hit its all-time high prior to the halving. And so that made it so that everyone's like, oh shit, we're rich again. But the other projects haven't really seen that influx of capital that came in. And so I think we're still early on that bull run, but I also think that everything's changed a lot and the industry has matured a lot. And so there's all these projects that you're just like, yeah, you're a crypto project you raise venture capital, but what are you doing? How are we using it? What are we applying it for? What's the utility? And how does it plug into the ecosystem of everything else? That's been just this big head scratcher where all these projects are kind of on their islands, and how do they collaborate with each other? And that's been kind of the variable, I think, of why they haven't all popped.
Yeah, I think I actually fully agree with that. I think it's a good observation too, what you said about the fact that it's a little bit of a misdirect that, Bitcoin already went up to the all-time high before what would actually be the bull market, which really shouldn't start until the fall and maybe not even until December, like a true bull market. And so because everyone saw things pump, really it was like October when everything turned around out of crypto winter and things started to pop off. And we've been on a good run for, 6-8 months, but nothing really life-changing, unless even Bitcoin only 3.5x. It's not changing very many people's lives.
You threw 100 grand at Wolf.
What's that?
Said unless you threw 100 grand at Wolf,
yeah, threw 100 grand, we'd just turn that into 2 mil. But the thing is that everything else is going to be more geared towards the fall and even potentially beginning of next year. And so it's still early. It might not be early on a specific project. If you missed getting into Brett, you missed it. It's not going to go below $1 billion, which is a bit of a bummer.
But could it go to 10 billion?
That's the question. Can it go to 10 billion? And the answer is probably yeah.
But yeah, 10 billion. So, you could.
Yeah, you missed the first 700x, but you can get the next 10x.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of 10x opportunities. 10x ain't. It's funny because you put money into the stock market and you do 20% of the year, you're a hero. You put money into crypto and you do 20% a year, you're a loser. It's like,
if you don't do 20%, you don't do 2,000% a year, you're a loser.
So it's funny that crypto has a whole different, ballpark. I mean, you can put money into, Mother this morning, it's up 20%. It's just just in half day. Yesterday Michi was up 90%. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. I think it's still early for sure. And the other thing you said, Josh, that I really agree with is there's so many projects that are just on an island. And I think we found ourselves really on an island as well. And the big projects, the Solanas, the Ethereums, the Bitcoins obviously is in a league of its own, but anything that's inviting other projects to build on it, Avalanche, etc. Those projects are extremely well funded. Those are ecosystem projects. I mean, they just have wild amounts of capital around them.
Right.
And so it's tough because if you wanted to come into the industry and compete with those projects, you just need to be extremely well funded. And most of those projects got their start in the ICO era and or raised venture capital during the last bull market. And so they've been well funded through this last bear market, and they have treasury, large treasuries to operate. Even something like XRP, it's a huge project. They have a huge treasury that they can operate off of and probably indefinitely. And so those are the projects that you end up competing with, or you end up jumping into the ecosystem. And it's interesting because there's a lot of projects that are in an ecosystem. I actually got corrected by somebody where I always had this theory that if you look at like more traditional market world and traditional business world, like the capital markets, if you, let's say, are Marvel, perfect example, Marvel Studios. So Marvel Studios got bought by Disney for $5 billion. And Marvel on its own can't ever be bigger than Disney because Disney owns Marvel, right? So you couldn't have, even if they sold off the asset, they couldn't sell that asset for more than Disney's worth because Disney is bigger than Marvel because Marvel's owned by Disney. It's just kind of like how it works out. But in crypto, and so I use that same theory in crypto. I was like, well, if you're built on another blockchain, you can't be bigger than that blockchain. But that's actually not true in crypto. And what tripped me out was that you look at something like Binance Smart Chain. Binance Smart Chain is bigger than Cosmos as a blockchain, but it uses the technology to operate that blockchain. So it is possible to be built in an ecosystem using a technology and have your market cap of the project be bigger than the project's market cap that you built your tech on. What that means to me is that you can have let's say like Coinbase comes out with their own coin, which they're rumored to do. And you have something like Brett, a meme coin. There's a world in which the Coinbase coin maybe, gets to a certain number of billions market cap, and maybe Brett gets to a bigger market cap. I don't know. Maybe it could happen. Who knows? Right. But that's just because like everyone just goes into that asset, and it's not necessarily a derivative asset or owned by the parent, like a parent company, like you would in a traditional capital market. And that gives anybody who's wanting to build technology in the crypto world like almost a level playing field, that you could build something that's bigger than the technology that you built it on. And so that gets me really excited. It gets me excited for layer one projects that are competing with other layer one projects. It gets me excited that's why I actually get excited about memes in this cycle. And I didn't buy any memes in the last cycle. Bought some NFTs, which didn't work out well. But there's a lot of opportunity in the meme coin market to look for plays that are getting adoption, where there's volume and where people are flocking in and talking about convictions plays. However, you also got to understand that with memes, it's not what it seems. There's a lot more than meets the eye, and there's a lot of stuff going on. I actually watched a video last night. It was crazy. It was like late, and I was watching a YouTube video. I don't know even how I must have clicked on something from Twitter and it ended up on a YouTube video about Wolf. And it was a guy who did like an investigation on the founding wallets behind Wolf to see how much the devs owned of the token supply and how they were able to make it look like everyone just owns 1%. And there's a lot of wallet holders that have 1%, but have it all like he like did a whole investigation through the Solana block explorer and showed how the dev owns like 80 something percent of the tokens, like all the way, like going all the way back. And he like uncovered it. He did like a spreadsheet and he like pasted the token addresses and found the origin address, and then found how that origin address sent payments to all these other addresses, and then how all those other addresses were running bots to generate the volume and, you know, paint the chart the way they want. I was like, oh geez. But the difference between something like Wolf, and I could be wrong on this, we'll have, you know, time will tell, is that when somebody has like intent to make something big, they're not going to rug it early, hypothetically speaking. I mean, 150 mils, 150 mils. So, you know, maybe someone could just rug it and say, hey, I'm cool with 150 mil. I don't care about 300 mil. But, you know, you look at something like Base Chain and Brett going to 1.5, 2 billion. And I'd rather have 2 billion than 1.5 100 million or, 100.
Well, but the problem with that is like a dev like that. Let's just say, for example, there's so many influencers pushing this project.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single influencer video is pushing this project. And it's interesting because they're also sharing those influencer posts from like Instagram or TikTok or wherever on the Wolf Instagram page.
Right.
And so if you're the dev and you just launched your project and you have all of these influencers sticking their neck out to their community saying that this is the biggest thing that's coming, same guy that did Pepe, same guy that did Brett. It's like, this is the next Brett, but it's for Solana. Yeah. And then that guy goes and rugs them. Dude, all those influencers are going to just get, get axed. And I just don't think that this guy wants to do that. If he has 80%, you sell a little bit here and there as it goes up to, the billion, he wants it at $1 billion. He wants to be 3 for 3. And I mean, just even like Brett, for example, that thing went up to 19 cents and came down to 12. Yeah. Guaranteed those guys took a couple $100 million out, Yeah. But Bill got wiped out of that. And guaranteed those were the devs, they're taking their money, they're putting their, their work, their hard work in, doing the art and, those animations. That
back to 16 cents. I mean, it's the problem. The difference is like, there's a way to get paid, and there's nothing wrong with people getting paid. It's how you get paid and how you do it, and whether you're going to go and do a Ponzi scheme and rug everybody and literally fuck everyone over. So there's nothing wrong with taking liquidity. There's nothing wrong with making money. It's just how you do it. And if you're doing it in a nefarious way to like harm people, then like that's a problem. But if you're trying to make money, I mean, look, crypto, there's a lot of ways to make money in crypto. There's nothing wrong with people making money in crypto.
That's why you're in crypto, to make some money. I don't give a shit if you're curing cancer. People are buying that cancer, curing project because it's going to make them money. It's just for
the most part. I mean, from the retail side, there's a lot of people that believe in what crypto does for the world, and that there's a lot of libertarians that, believe that this is how you have sovereignty and that banks run the world, and, how you prevent war is when you take money away from, from where money isn't equated to war. And there's a lot of ideology that's around blockchain and crypto that does attract a lot of people of why they're involved in it. But from a retail standpoint, people are trying to get paid.
Yeah.
Look, but I also agree. Like, I'm in crypto because I like the way that you can make money from it, but also like it makes it so I don't have to have all my money in a checking account. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so that like I can, and it's so much easier to like buy other, crypto stuff. Like if you want to go buy stocks, it's, it's just kind of a pain. It's slow. It's pretty boring, when crypto is friggin' exciting, you get into a project and the thing goes up, and 5x, you're like, whoa, what do I do? Do I fucking sell or do I hold? And we're on the phone with each other, just like, oh, bro, it's fucking, and then it goes down to 12. You're like, bro, you fucking double your money.
Yeah, well, I think it just moves. Not I think crypto moves way faster, and
that's why it's fun,
Right. Well, and you're in this like ADD world where like everyone's on TikTok and their attention spans 5 seconds, and so people don't want to be in these long assets. Like, yeah, if you invested in Apple 10 years ago, you'd be a millionaire, but like you had to wait 10 years. Like people want to be a millionaire this week. That's why people don't want to have these 9 to 5 jobs. That's why the workforce has changed all the way to like influencers and and entrepreneurs. Everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. Used to be that you had a dream to have a steady job that you could work at for 20 to 30 years and get a house and retire and raise your family. Like that was the American dream.
Yeah. Now you can't buy a house with that job.
Right. That was the American dream. Now the American dream is to be a TikTok celebrity and, get paid $1 million a year and go and, fly around the world and never have to work a steady job. Like that's the new American dream. And it's just changed. And crypto enables that, where people are able to have this more fast paced, easy money, access to liquidity, being able to get in and out of these assets and, high five each other with Lamborghinis. And that shit's fun.
Josh, were you the one that posted that thing about United States no longer the top 5 happiest place to live, or top 20?
Top 20, yeah.
And I was just thinking about it. Like, it's just crazy that America, and I read that post, and it was like the reason people are leaving America is because of like all the, corporate policy and like, all the things that are happening within like the government systems and stuff like that. And I was talking to my wife about, I was like, what if we like moved out of the country? Like, where would we want to go? I was like, let's go to friggin' Mexico. But Mexico's fucked up. It's like when I was looking at Costa Rica, like
Portugal.
You could get Portugal's sick. That's definitely a interesting thing. But I was looking at Costa Rica because I want to be like tropical and like kind of like Hawaii vibes. And dude, in Costa Rica, dude, you can get like a 4-bedroom villa for like $2,500, but that's like crazy expensive in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
And I was like, even just like looking at, just trying to step out of America. Like what's a place that's got infrastructure, tropical, good surf, but then you got to think you're going to raise your kids there. It's like, how are the schools, like how is the safe, is it safe?
Yeah.
I mean, America, at least I know I'm, knock on wood, but like, I feel pretty safe being here, especially where I live. It's a beach community. Everybody knows each other. All my neighbors, I'm like, say hi to. Everyone's kind of looking out for each other. But dude, if you live in fucking like Chicago, like, dude, ain't safe there. There might be some parts that are, but even still, those parts are, bumped up right against the unsafe spots. So it's like, where do you even go?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, it's not like America has the best education system in the world. So, we're actually one of the worst. You look at Europe and the value of the education system out there. I mean, people are literally sending their kids to Europe to get educated to come back to America. But America used to encourage innovation, and something happened where, and I think it's this whole immigration thing, where this whole immigration thing has just pushed people away from bringing the smartest people into this country and being able to really nurture immigration into this country, not keep everybody out, close the borders, and taking our jobs. Look, if they're taking your job, means you're a fucking idiot, and you should go learn a skill because some person from another country is taking your job. Like, level up, like that's my take on it. But I think that we've just created this, like, close the borders, barricade ourselves in. It's like America in, America out. Like, that's our society and our mentality, but that's not even how this country was built. And we used to have the smartest minds from all over the world that were just like trying to get into here. And on top of that, the internet happened, and the internet made it so that you don't need to come move to the slums of Chicago to come and work in an American company. People can work from anywhere they want on a laptop on a tropical island. Like, that's been the big shift. And so it's like, why come to America? Why move here? And we haven't really solved how we nurture the smartest people here and the people who want to come here who are intelligent.
Also, it's super unsafe. I mean, for your like kids, I mean, we're the highest gun deaths in the entire world.
Yeah.
And every 4 hours there's a mass shooting in America.
It's fucking nuts.
What? It's like, I don't want my kids going to school, dude. The chances of there being a mass shooting at your school is pretty fucking high, dude. Even if you live in like, a safe area, no one's safe from gun violence. And that's the crazy thing.
There was in Ann Arbor at the parade, there was like a bunch of people getting shot, and our family.
It's happening all the time.
Yeah, it kind of surreal. You don't think about it, that it's going to impact you in your life, and then all of a sudden we're like watching the news and having to text message the family to see if they were okay at the parade, and they're like, oh my God, But yeah, it's definitely an issue. I mean, America's priorities are definitely messed up. Funny enough, the thing you were just talking about with immigration and the best and brightest, which obviously a lot of entrepreneurs, and when American was a beacon for immigration, pretty much I'd say 90% of everyone is from an immigrant family. And I mean, every single American's an immigrant. There's not a single American who's not a Native American that's not an immigrant. So the whole idea that like shut down the borders is almost like a fallacy. It's ridiculous. But one of the things that Trump recently said is that he's going to make it so anybody with a degree from an American university can stay in America.
Yeah, they'll get a green card.
Which is like funny coming from a guy who's talking about deporting everyone that's here.
He's talking about the people. From my understanding, he's talking about the people hopping over the border, taking the boats around the border, and pouring in through the spots where there's not enough, security. But if you make it in and you go to school and you graduate, well, hey, here's a ticket for you to start working. And that's what he's thinking about, like, get these people the ability to work instead of having these people working under the table, because they're already going to be here. Like, if you sneak into America undocumented, you're still working. You just ain't getting a friggin' W-2.
It's not even about just people hopping the border. Like, I have tons of friends who are here on a student visa, and you go and study, and then it's like, all right, you did it, leave. And I don't agree with many things Trump says, but that is one thing that I do agree with, that there are a lot of smart people, talented people, working people that should be here that can't stay. And I have friends all the time. I mean, Noli dealt with this shit. Like
Gabby dealt with it. Han Lee got kicked out of the country. I mean, he went to USC. Kids,
smart,
working for very important, people and running companies, and has to leave the country. So that really doesn't make sense. And then the flip side of it is that you have a lot of people coming over illegally, seeking asylum, and those laws are totally effed up. And there's a lot of finger pointing in Congress, and in general, just, in the politics side of things, but no one seems to understand that finger pointing gets nowhere, and nobody wants to collaborate because they don't want to give any wins to, their opponent. And it's just really dysfunctional. It's wildly dysfunctional because, like, obviously, if you're even, let's say, 51% majority, whatever party you're in, it's a lot easier to get bills passed if you could just get 10-20% of the minority to co-sign. Then it's a lot easier. You don't even need the full party on board for everything. But what happens is they have these like razor thin margins and try and jam, legislation through with just these, very, very fractional majority votes and maneuvering to get these things done on their agenda. But without a bipartisan approach, like, it's super slow. And so since we have these 2-year cycles around, well, there's elections every year, but generally 2-year cycle of like the large positions of, kind of the cycling of reelection, there's not a lot of time to get stuff done. It's just not a lot of time when you're doing posturing.
And you have to campaign. So it's like you're in for a year and then you're campaigning for a year. It's like, how do you even supposed to get anything done?
Yeah. Well, we had 4 years of Trump and he didn't do shit about the immigration problem, even though that was his big grandstand.
Pages.
Well, his big thing, and a lot of people say that, is he just shut down the border, and he also put in that, whatever it was, Title IX or something, that made it really difficult for people to, he created a lot of chaos at the border, and I think he generally wanted to try and figure it out. There's always one of the best platforms to run on for election is fear, or you're either running on fear or hope, right? So what he accomplished, over all these years, basically going on 8 years now of him, on a pulpit telling us what he thinks, almost actually longer. I think it's 9 years going on 10 that he's been talking and everyone's been listening, and whether they want to or not. But he ran a fear platform, and versus like someone like Obama ran a hope platform. So you can get people on fear, you can get people on hope. And the fear platform is that there's these other people that are taking your jobs, making, your life worse, which is, relatively a fallacy. Like, you couldn't point to one person who's fired up about the border and have them tell you how something at the border has impacted their life. I don't think you'd be hard pressed to find one person in your whole entire sphere that could tell you like, oh yeah, this happened to me or my family. It didn't. And like you said, they're not taking your jobs either, those people. But we've created a fear, thing about people pouring over the border and, terrorism and, all these different things that, haven't materialized. It's just a story that people are afraid of. But it doesn't negate the fact that there's an issue that should be resolved. And it unfortunately would require some bipartisan participation, or it should be bringing people together to solve the problem, because it is a problem. And, it wasn't as big of a problem in America if you go back 50 years ago, because there wasn't that many people in the world. We didn't have transportation like we had, where you can, move as far and wide and efficiently around as you can today. And also just population growth in general. There's just more people in the world, like a lot more people in the world. So people are going to want to come to America for sure. And so more people are prone to, make that trek from wherever they're coming from to try and get into America. And if we don't have good policy, and we don't have like the administrative infrastructure to handle, people trying to come in, that's a problem, and that should be solved. That should be a problem that doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican. You want that to be solved. Is it such a bad problem that like the sky is falling? I don't think so. Most of my Republican friends would tell you differently. But then when I ask them, like, well, give me an example, they usually can't. And it's just because, like, you just go off of what you hear. Generally, what people are upset about, like the things that I think people are upset about, and I find myself I'm definitely, liberal, but, I like to listen to both sides of the arguments, and, I like to find common ground with people. And generally, I would say it doesn't matter what your political leanings are. Like, you just want to live a good life. You want to live a good life. Everyone loves their families. They want their families to be healthy, happy, prosperous, educated. People want freedom. And, generally speaking, like, if you ask someone if they want to be incarcerated, if they want to be free, they're going to tell you they want to be free. I mean, everyone wants that. And so there's a lot of commonality between everybody. And so it's frustrating that there's so much divisiveness in what people are talking about that they want, when there's also just a lot of commonality. And it sucks that we can't focus so much on the common ground, and that we don't have, voices in the political sphere that I think represent like the next generation. Like, I think that's probably the biggest thing that frustrates people on both sides, is that you just want someone to be a good spokesman for you, and for you on part of the human condition and what we're all trying to do with our lives and the limited time we have on the planet. And, obviously you're going to always identify with people that are like closer to your age. Right. And it's frustrating that there's so many people, like the mean, age of people that are making laws in this country is like in the high 60s, low 70s, like ridiculous,
Yeah.
There's just
and the big problem is this two-party system. And so it creates this divisiveness because you're either this or you're that. You can't be anything else. And if you're an independent, then your voice doesn't matter. And then it's just whether you're going to fold and go here or go there. And when you look at the loudest voices, and the biggest problem is the loudest voices, because like you said, most people, even if you're a Democrat or Republican, you're in like the more medium, side of things, where you're not just like, where, got a huge Trump flag off your boat in Florida, or that you're, at the pro-Hamas rally, beating up Jews. Like those are the loudest voices, are the things that get put up on TV, but they're not the masses. And so, but when you go all the way to the fringe, it's basically a horseshoe, and you have the people that are saying the exact same thing just about the other party. And it's like, it's laughable, because you hear the far left saying, talking about the far right, or talking about Republican Party, and then you hear the far right talking about the Democratic Party, and they're literally saying the same exact things about each other. But you just, switch out the word Democrat or Republican. It's
some of it. I would say there's also some subversive stuff that, people should do some research on. There's something, if you've never researched it, you should research it, especially if you're thinking about voting Republican. You should research Project 2025. And Project 2025 is a pretty crazy roadmap that is drafted to to be implemented under Trump's leadership if he's to get elected. And if you read about Project 2025 and you're a Republican, you may think twice. Project 2025 is pretty anti-democratic, and mostly like autocratic leaning. Like, it's not truly representative of what like America stands for, what I think most people, whatever your political leanings are, would think that is representative of America. And we've seen a lot of, and this is the thing that where technology really comes into play, and hopefully where technology can disrupt some of the status quo, is that the current democratic process, especially for elections, doesn't properly represent the populace of America. Like, we know that the electorate system is pretty much a joke, because, and I guess I haven't done a huge amount of research to understand why we still hold on to the electorate system. But if you do look at what the electorate system does, like, it does not properly weight the population of America with the voting power of individual states. And what you see is that the election comes down to like, less than two handful of states out of, all the states in America. Basically, like somewhere between like 7 and 9 states decide the election, because you know that certain states are going to go left. You know, certain states are going to go right. You know that more states are going to go right than are going to go left. But the weight of the electorate, you know, obviously recalibrates. So the left leaning states or the left voting states actually have more power in the electorate than individual right voting states. That's why you end up with more right voting states to, you know, even out with the left voting states being less. However, it comes down to which ones are the swing states. And what's happening at the swing state level is that there's all this districting, like we've been hearing about it for years, like decades, and it's been litigated in courts called gerrymandering, where they redraw the districts. And inside of those, each individual district, they have the electorate vote, and then that ends up helping to determine whether the state swings left or swings right, and then where those votes end up going, the electorate votes end up going. But there's so much manipulation happening, the ground game, in also the redistricting, that's manipulating the way that these maps vote. What they'll do is they'll like identify certain, let's say, like towns or cities that are predominantly liberal, for instance, or Democrat, vote Democrat. And then you'll have all these other fringe, smaller towns that are Republican. And so what they'll do is they'll break up, the liberal voting state and where the populace is, and kind of try and dilute that with the Republican voting towns in areas, to try and dilute the power of those city centers. And a lot of the city centers are liberal or vote Democrat. And so, especially in the swing states, so they're trying to manipulate to try and get those swing states to end up vote swing Republican. And if they can pull this off, and it's like a chess game. It's like you're moving individual pawns, and it takes years and years, and you're litigating it through the court systems for years. And you also have individual presidents electing judges, and then those judges in each of those little districts end up hearing the cases for the gerrymandering and voting in favor of the party that put them on the bench. And then, like, over time, it's just that they're playing such a long game. Over the course of 50 years of tampering with this stuff, you can play a long enough game, you can play to win. And so you end up with a situation where you can position a candidate on either party. Doesn't matter. They're all straw men, in the sense like they're propped up by their donors and the agendas of the people that give them money to run their campaigns. And then you ultimately are serving an agenda once you get into office. It happens on both sides of the party, or both parties. And if you look at what the Republican Party is pushing for, Project 2025, you can see that it's some effed up stuff that they're wanting to push through. Yeah.
But and most young people don't even participate in their local elections. They're just only there voting for the president. And so you have a lot of these things that slip in at the local level and can work their way up from like the inner workings, because people aren't paying attention to who becomes, the mayor, who becomes the governor, or who becomes the sheriff or the district attorney. And these people are coming up through the middle. And they've shown a bunch of people related to the good old boys that have come up through like the local elections. And now you have these people and there was and nobody contending them, like just literally one person ran and one person won. And they just like took the office because nobody wants to work that job. But it was just like a way to just get into the system. And now you're like, oh, well, I was this and now I'm that, and now I'm going to be that. And that's how you just work your way up through the heart of it.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. There's a lot of really weird stuff like that. Like I don't have it off the top of my head, but there's this one county, I think it's in Texas, where Trump put some wacky judge in appointed that judge for that specific area. And all of these really kind of like far right fringe weird cases that you have like Republicans trying to overturn, get cases to make it to the Supreme Court, for instance. They always have to originate in a local courthouse somewhere. And so what you have is this little like bumfuck out of nowhere courthouse with some super far right leaning judge that is just being bombarded with all these cases that are being filed in there. And it's like, it's this little tiny courthouse. It's like not a big city courthouse, but it's just packed because they're all trying to get this like far right judge to just like, just sign off on all these opinions, get heard, stand in line, and then it will get appealed. And then they position it into the appellate, and then whatever happens in the appellate, whether it goes against them or not, then they try and get it to the Supreme Court. It's a 3-4 year process, and you just keep pushing all this paper through, and over years and years and years, you end up with a situation like abortion getting overturned. That didn't happen overnight. That's just a process. They've been pushing on that for half century or whatever.
Yeah, there's two things that I wanted to say. Like, the first thing is that it feels like this more than ever is a social media election, and one side is doing a really, really good job of creating content to make the other side look incapable of holding the office, even though they're both old as fuck and they're probably the worst two options we could have. But it's like one's better than the other. But the point is that like you gotta think about the people who the next generation of voters, the kids that are 17 going to be 18 this year, or that, and those are the ones that are going to be voting. And those kids are friggin' stuck in their phones. They've grown up their entire lives with cell phones in front of their faces. Their popularity is based on followers. I was just hearing from my 7-year-old who it's like, if you don't have a Stanley cup, like one of those Stanley mugs, like a water bottle at school, dude, you're not cool. Like, you have to have a Stanley cup. And if you don't have a Stanley cup, then you're not cool. And then you have these little 7-year-old, 8-year-olds with cell phones, iPhones, and they're all on TikTok, they're all on YouTube. And this information is being funneled to all these people on social media to either hate one side and like the other. And the problem is that you have these two old guys that aren't relating to the young generation. And so people are always going to look at, am I making money? Is my family healthy? Or is the cost of living outrageous? The cost of gas is crazy. Inflation's out of control. I'm making more money, but the cost of living is 3-4x. And that's just happened to my buddy. He's a firefighter, and he makes good money. He makes really good money. And his wife also, she works. They have a 2-job system for their house. But their kids are in private school, and their lives are expensive. And because of inflation, everything is more expensive. So they have to work more. They're hanging out with their family less. And so it's like people reflect on that. And then they see on social media all the shit that's being shoved down their throat. And they're like, whoa, fuck, dude, I don't like the way that it's going right now. So maybe this other guy might be better. And I think that's the problem with, specifically with Trump and Biden, is that like the Trump team is doing a really good job at reaching these people, saying, hey, look how fucked up your life is. And think back 5 years, in the middle of the Trump campaign, or Trump, whatever his run or his tenor, was your life better? And people have to be like, well, I don't even remember what it was like 5 years ago. So you're asking people to make that decision, and it's hard you're gonna contemplate that. Yeah,
well, you're also experiencing the last 4 years as the president.
That's the thing, though.
Trump got to come into office after Obama's 8 years, and the country was in a pretty good shape. If you remember when Obama came into office after Bush was president, the country was in a recession. I mean, it was absolutely fucked. And so over those 8 years, we rebuilt, or under that administration, the country got rebuilt, and Trump got to come into that. And obviously, can't blame COVID on Trump, but decisions that were made under that administration, like printing trillions of dollars, has come in here. And the interesting thing is everyone talks about how the economy is fucked and all this stuff, and that's kind of like the talking point. But the stock market has reached all-time highs, like all-time. And so like you have the economy, which is based on this stock market, and then you have inflation fighting that. And it's easy to confuse those two, where you're like, the economy is bad because I'm broke. And it feels like you're broke. And, Jess, you went and did that research on, what the cost of a dollar was just 2 years ago versus what it is today. And people feel the weight of that. And that's going to go against Biden for sure, because Trump could be like, see, you feel broken. This is the guy who was president. And now you're,
people aren't smart enough to know that. Like, people don't understand that the ramifications of a president don't actually go into effect until 2 years after they leave the office or their next term. And so like Biden, he walked into a shitstorm, and he's the one getting hated on for the shitstorm that he inherited. Just like Trump is
and Obama almost didn't win his second term because it was a close call, and there were a lot of people thought that he was going to lose because the first 4 years were a disaster, because he was rebuilding from the recession and had to do that.
They just said, well, things are looking okay. Let's see, give him another 4 years and see what he can do. And he crushed it, Well,
he was a G, and he raised off of hope, which was, people wanted hope at that time because people were hurt. And, Trump.
Well, I felt so inspired when I heard his, presidential speech. I mean, you can't watch that speech and be like, this guy's a loser.
Here's the problem. The problem is that Obama's the best orator of all time. Right. Nobody is better ever. And I don't think anyone maybe ever will be as good as him. I mean, I'd love for someone to be as good as him, but he was the best and best ever. It's so good that, he won the popular vote and he won the electorate twice. I mean, the guy is a winner for sure. Problem with Biden is he's not a good orator. Like, even when he was younger, he had a speech impediment. Now he's older. I mean,
it's horrific.
It's bad, right? And so when you think, like you said, you're 17 years old, 18 years old, 20 years old, whatever, you're trying to get rich, you're trying to drive a Lambo, you're trying to have 1 million followers, you're trying to travel, whatever you're trying to do, live like a good life, how it looks on Instagram. And then you see some guy who like literally sounding out his own name. Yeah, you're kind of like, get this guy out of here. This guy's old. Now, Trump just happens, even though he's like half the time babbling, and he just has a little bit smoother vernacular. Like, he's just a little bit smoother on the mic. And even though he's, half the shit he's saying is whacked out, and his brain is busted up badly. He's old as heck. But if you had to compare the two, like, one's a better orator than the other, and people want a good orator. And that's what sucks about, I think Biden could win more people over with better marketing. I think at this point, it's kind of like, I remember Hillary Clinton's campaign. It was like, when they go low, we go high. I'm like, no, you need to go low and beat their ass on the low road, like straight up. You need to go get in a fist fight with them on the low road. There ain't no going high in today's world. You need to stoop to their level, beat them, and then you can get up after they're laid out.
Is just fucking up,
It's bad, and I feel bad, I feel bad because, to your point, like, the Republicans have a better ground game. The funny thing is that the Republicans, I mean, if the Democrats knew what they were doing, you just punch the Republicans in the nose. Like, if the narrative that was being pumped out for the last year or 2 or 3 was that the economy is completely trash because of Trump, like, if that's all you heard for 3 years, think Trump's getting elected, like, he would have to wear that. You just blame him. I mean, and that's what Trump's whole game is. It's just blaming him. So I just don't understand why you don't stoop to that level. Just blame him. It's frustrating because if you were a political strategist, people just believe what they hear. So if you just keep saying something over and over and over again, and all they hear is Trump fucked up the economy, Trump fucked up the economy, economy's fucked up because of Trump. You think they're going to be blaming Biden for the economy? No, because all they've been hearing for 3 years is that he inherited a shitstorm. Right. So it's frustrating that they didn't take that. That was served them on the silver platter. Here's the funny thing. Yeah. If Trump won a second term, he would be the guy who looks like a complete loser because he would have effed it up in his first term and he'd be wearing it on his head in his second term.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wish he would have won a second term, except I couldn't listen to that guy fucking blabber for another day. Yeah. But it's like, yeah, if he would have just would have had to, like, you know, all the policies and all the stuff he put in order and had to experience that, it would swing. And that's what happens is the pendulum just swings far left and far right every single year because that's just, you know, we had a black president and then you swung all the way to the far right. And that's, you know, unfortunately what we're dealing with.
I saw this cool video of this guy, total friggin' hippie out in, you know, probably Texas or Louisiana or somewhere. But anyway, he was saying that every 100 years, new people are on planet Earth. And to think about this moment in time that we're here on Earth with all these people, your neighbors, your kids, your brothers, your sisters, your parents, like these are the people that we just happen to be here at the exact same time. And in 100 years, we'll all be gone. And there'll be another, you know, 12 billion, whatever people by then, you know? So it's just like, kind of like, whoa moment. Like, dude, we're all just here, fucking little specks of dust on this fucking huge plot of land, trying to figure out how the fuck we get from one day to the next year and try not to die of a disease or get hit by a bus and make some money so you can feed yourself and have a roof over your head. It's like, but now's the time to just enjoy life. You know, it's like we can sit here and talk about politics, but fuck, I hate politics. This is probably the most politics I've talked in fucking since we were doing Mother's Day or something where we freaking got into talking about politics. But it's just like, funny. I can't spend my days, you know, I mean, every once in a while it's cool to get into a debate and hear the fucked up shit that's going on in the world. But like, that's the thing where if you listen to, like Josh said this, there's a lot of really cool shit happening in the world and nobody's talking about it. And especially when you go into a debate, they're only talking about the fucked up shit and how are you going to fix the fucked up shit. But I would love to see a debate where they only talk about the good shit.
Right.
And all the cool things that are being innovated and built and rockets flying through the air and fucking cures for cancer. I just saw something about, you know, a cure for cancer that obviously they've had that for a long time, but these other countries are now, you know, saying, hey, we got it too. So it's like, where's the cool stuff, the innovation, the science, the friggin' biology and all these cool things that people have been doing over the last, you know, century? No one's talking about that shit. They're only talking about like how fucked up inflation is, how fucked up healthcare is, how fucked up abortion is, how fucked up immigration is, how fucked up the wars are. It's like, you go on Thursday, there's going to be a debate of the two fucking knuckleheads that are going to be our president, and watch, they're not going to talk about one positive thing throughout the entire thing. It's just going to be, you're a fucking loser. You're a fucking loser. You're a loser. No, you're a loser. You fucked up. I came in and I inherited your fuck up. And if you get it again, you're going to fuck it up again. It's like,
if that was his, I'll tell you right now, if Biden comes in and says that, he could win the next election. That would be the best narrative. If his whole entire thing, all he said is, I am the fucking janitor. You could call me Janitor Biden. I've been cleaning up your freaking mess for the last 4 years. The policies that I've been putting in place for the last 3 years are going to be the policies that are going to pay off. The policies that you put in place for your 4 years are the policies that wrecked everybody's lives for the last 3. So everyone who's feeling pain, everyone who's suffering, everyone who's making less, everyone with the devaluation of the dollar, that all happened on your watch. And because and if someone says this, and I swear no one's ever going to say it, but if someone just said this one thing, which is that what's happening today is based on what happened in the last administration. If you like how your life is right now, great. Blame it on the last president. If you don't like how your life is right now, great. Blame it on the last president. And it's just like, if you want to think back to when Trump was in office and say, yeah, you know what? My life was a little bit better. Great. That was Obama. If you think your life's effed up right now, great. That was Trump. So the idea that someone would say, my life is effed up right now, let's put Trump back in office, means you're an idiot. Like, it's just, sorry, but you're just not thinking this through properly. So it's frustrating because people don't think like that. So here, look, inflation calculator. If you're looking on the screen, if you have 100 grand right now, that 100 grand was worth $82,000. What is that? What that means is that if you had $82,000 in 2020, you would have, as of today, that would give you $100,000 in today's spending power. So that's a way of saying that your money's worth 18% less today than it was back in 2020. So if you had 100 grand in 2020, here, it's the other way. If you had 100 grand in 2020, then you would have 115 grand. That would be the equivalent of 115 grand today. Or let's just see. I'll tell you right now.
120.
Even crazier. 120 grand. So
Crazy.
you're
feeling it. If you go to the grocery store
20%.
and you're buying some organic blueberries, $9.
Yeah. So here, this is how this works out.
Not a big one, the small fucking one. My kids eat that in literally one sitting.
That's insane.
Shoveling
So
$8 of berries in their throat.
So you're missing every $100. And you know what's crazy, Josh? Remember when we went to Europe? We went to Cannes in 2006. You would cash $100 bill and you would get 80 euro. And I was just like, and then you go buy a drink, a cocktail, and it was $20 for a cocktail.
20
so
euro
cocktails you blow through in France. You blow through $100 just buying a round of drinks. And I was like, I can't live here. This is crazy. Like, I can't even stay in Europe. Then it equalized where the dollar and the euro were like really relatively on par with one another.
That's when football got called soccer.
Boom. But now you have the same situation, but happening in the US, where you have the price of a drink is $22, and the value of that, $100 is worth $80.
And they got mandatory gratuity of 25 to 30%.
So this is the pain that people are feeling right now. Like, your wallet, every time you spend $100, it's worth $80, right? It's worth $81. And that's painful, for people. They're feeling that. But that ain't Biden. Biden, you have to realize, like, Biden's policies, you're not even living in any of Biden's policies right now. Biden's policies aren't going to show up until next term. So, Trump would absolutely love to get in office, because one thing in history, if you go back in history and you look at the term after a Democratic president, relatively speaking, if you look at the trend, it's pretty good after Democrats are in office every single time. Now, it's not always necessarily great when they're in office, because they're usually cleaning up the mess from a Republican administration prior to. And that's the pain that people are feeling. But unfortunately, the Democrats are just not good at marketing. And so that's the risk, is that they can't pull up an inflation calendar.
They're really good at marketing to the old folk, 60 and up. Or let's say 55 and up. 55 and up people, that's where they're targeting. Yeah. But it's like, there's so many young kids out there that are like paying attention, and
they aren't, though, because a lot of young people don't vote.
No. Hold on. They're paying attention to their social media. And so what they're seeing is Biden babbling, unable to finish a sentence, wandering on stage, whether it's, obviously that's fabricated, you're just getting a 15-second clip of something. You don't know if he just happened to stutter in that 15 seconds, and the rest of the 90 minutes was him just on point, just blasting off perfect, speech. But it doesn't matter. That's what they're seeing. That's what you saw. And that's what you saw. And when you go to the ballot in November, you're going to remember that shit because those are the only videos that are being created and the only social media like that you're seeing. Like, I don't see any, I'm talking zero social media about good stuff that Biden and the Democrats are doing. All I see is them blowing it. And then I see, what I do actually see is Trump, saying the most friggin' oddball, weird, fucked up shit you've ever heard. But they're not like, it's not enough to sway somebody who's kind of on the fence. You know what I mean?
Especially when they use the narrative, when part of the Republican narrative, their whole narrative is to play the victim, right? So then they go, oh, we're just being victimized and attacked, and weaponizing the Justice Department against him, and he's a victim, and then he goes and raises all this money, because he's being victimized. And then when they show him doing something stupid, they go, yeah, that's just them, victimizing. But to your point, like, if you could create make the narrative like this, like, look at your money, yes. And instead of pretending like everything's great, like, I can't tell you how many times I've had a Democrat tell me the economy's great. I'm just like, what are you talking about? If you make 10 grand a month and your rent's $5 and your car payments, plus gas and insurance is a G. All right. You got $4 grand left. Health insurance, we know, is about $1,000. And if you have a family, it's more. So now you got $3,000. $3,000 for food, entertainment, credit cards. Are you kidding me? That's not enough. No one can live. And that's making 10 grand a month net. Yeah. People aren't making 10 grand a month net. Most people. That means you have like $150,000, $160,000 a year salary. Most people don't have that kind of salary. So if you're running on like an 80,000, or let's say you have two incomes that get you to 150, that's what you're bringing in net. You have no money. Like, you are literally tight. And here's the thing. If you go back to 2020, you had an extra $20,000 per 100 in your account. So that was the difference between like you cruising, having money to go on trips, to buy gifts for your kids and friends and family, and in the holidays. That money's not there now just because of like the reduced spending power. And so people are feeling that if you don't give them the right narrative on what it is, then it's going to be very difficult for you to win. Even though if you put the Republicans in power, and I mean, Americans aren't very smart population anyways, in general. Like, we don't think very far in advance, unlike like, Chinese populations, Chinese governments, they like are operating on like multi-100-year plans. Like, Americans barely can operate on a 2 to 4 year plan. But yeah, we vote against our self-interest all the time. Like, all the time. We make decisions that aren't in the best interest for the future and just what's good for us now. That's just a general trait in America. And yeah, it's, for a lot of the ideologies that people believe in, voting for Republicans in the fall, probably not going to be in your best interest in the future. But you will get the payoff from whatever Biden put in place, because Biden did a lot of good, and his list of accolades is going to go down in history, probably make him one of the better presidents in the history of the United States. But he's done such a bad job toting his record, like, and hopefully he talks about it on Thursday. But most people probably couldn't tell you what he's done. He's done amazing stuff. I've asked a couple like ardent Trump supporters. I've been like, oh, you love Trump. Name 5 things that Trump did during his presidency that were good. I've yet to find anybody to give me 5.
Maybe leave it in the comments if you got 5 things.
Yeah,
leave it in the comments below.
If you got 1. If you got 1.
No, 5.
You could probably come up with 5. If you have 5, put them in the comments. The funny thing is, one of my buddies, he sent me 5, and like 3 of them, Trump didn't even do them. I was like, Trump didn't do that. That was Obama. It's like, oh, Trump, he's like, oh yeah, we were a thriving economy. Trump didn't do that. He had nothing to do with the economy. It's just like, they're basically earmarking an era. So it's interesting. Like, it just shows marketing. It's a popularity.
But this is also why crypto is something that people are putting their money in, because they don't trust America. They don't trust the dollar, and they're putting it in crypto. And this is how you can make some fast cash and it's off the books, and that's why crypto is where it's at. So
and over time it goes like this, not like this, like the US dollar. So your money's sitting in your checking account from 2020. Well, you got $20,000 less today. If you had put it in Bitcoin, you'd probably be a multimillionaire.
Yeah, you'd at least be up 3x.
That's what they call it in inflation.
No way, dude. 2020 was at 5K or 15K, dude.
Yeah.
Even if you bought it at the all-time high 4 years ago, you're still up, you know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. 15K was like the all-time high before it went to 8, or I guess it was 8, 17.
Think about it. That's actually a crazy thing. So if you took $100,000 and you put it in Bitcoin in 2020 at 5,000, so that would be, you'd have, what is that, 20?
You'd have 500 Bitcoin,
you'd
right?
have 20 Bitcoins.
Or 20 Bitcoins.
And your Bitcoin, you have 20 Bitcoins. And your Bitcoins, even at today's low, but let's just use yesterday's high, 65,000. So you have 1.3 million bucks. If you bought $100,000 worth of Bitcoin 4 years ago, you'd have about 1.3 million.
You got 80K.
You put $100,000 in your savings account at 5% interest, you got $80,000.
You can't even buy a house in California with 80K. It's
you
like
can't even put it down deposit. You can't even buy a car.
No, you can buy a car.
Not all cars.
You can buy a Honda.
All right, boys, let's wrap it up. This has been a hardcore political conversation. Yeah. I guarantee we're going to have at least more than the one comment that told us that we're fucking idiots. They might be calling us idiots, but we might get 2 calling us idiots in this one. Probably.
Hopefully they leave some comments on what Trump did.
Let's get into the comments. Let's get wild. Let's get crazy. I'm down to reply. Let's have some debates and tell your friends.
All right, boys. Always a pleasure. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
All right.
Later.